Hi, Ragnar. How are you?
Hi, Lolly. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very well, and it's so great to see everyone. We have a ton of people here in our workshop, and um, that's it's just so heartwarming to see everyone. We really miss you, Ragnar, and we really miss being together. I think as singers, it's so much about the fundamental thing we do is so much about being together, and not to be able to have that in our lives is really hard. So I'm hoping that today being together will feel a little bit like reminding us of that wonderful feeling of still being singers. And so I'm really happy. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Such a pleasure, Lolly. Thank you for having me. And yes, it's so great to be together. And we sorely miss singing, all of us, and singing together. So these are trying times for us. And what we aim to do today is to find ways to just stay in shape until we can meet again and sing together. So um, before we get into actually warming up, I was asked to give a little bit of background about myself. So I grew up in a musical family. Both my parents were choir conductors. So choirs were in my mother's milk. It was all around me since I was born. So I went with my parents to choir tours and concerts, and there were choir parties. And when I was about 7, I started in a boys' choir, and my mother sang with me and my siblings since we were very small. So it was all around, and I started playing instruments, piano and organ, and was trained as an organist. But after my voice broke when I was 16, well, a couple of years after, since 16 until I got the position at the San Francisco Symphony at 41, I was with a teacher always because I became obsessed with singing. Of course, I became a choir conductor, but I had this passion for singing, and in an attempt to understand as much as possible the human voice. So I was with various teachers and quite different, I might say, with different aims. And I love to say that classical singing, there are many paths that lead to the same goal, but there are also different goals. We must be aware of that. So for 6 years, I was with a wonderful, famous tenor, Nikolai Gedda, but I also had many others. And I tried to pick tools and exercises and things from all of them, and this is, you're going to get a little taste of that today. So without further ado, if you maybe you're standing already, I'm going to stay seated because I need to be close to the piano, and I don't want to meddle with the computer here. So but if you stand and find the balance in your body, shake loose your shoulders, your hips, your knees, and try to find that column of balance, internal balance, where the head is just resting on the pillar of the spine. And from there, find the space in between the jawbones so that we become fully aware of the fact that the jaw doesn't only open like this, it also opens like that, right? So play around with that a little bit. And we want the jaw to be as loose as possible and sort of hanging in its own weight, as it were. And from there, let's play around with yawning a little bit. Quite often, the allegory of singing with a bit of a yawn is used. And I think that's very helpful. It's in a nutshell what it's about. Because when we yawn, we naturally lower the larynx and raise the soft palate. And that's what we want in classical singing. It's a different matter with pop, jazz, rock singing, right? But classical singing, so a little bit of that. But if you go fully into a yawn, you can't really sing. That would be crazy. So just a tad, like a third into the yawn. So you feel those muscles, those tiny muscles that are activated when you yawn, how that expands the throat and lowers the larynx and raises the soft palate. And thereby we get an enlarged pharynx space, the empty space above the vocal cords and up to the soft palate, the space that reverberates when we activate the vocal cords. So with that, let's do a little bit of breathing exercises. Breathe in and out on a long S. And squeeze the air out actively in this exercise so that you engage the support muscles. And then hold when you've emptied your lungs. Hold still for a second. And and release. So quick release. So we get used to that way of breathing in. We empty the lungs in a phrase, and then we do a quick release that is just naturally draws the air in. We don't need to do it actively. It just happens on its by itself. Again. Squeeze it out and register the muscles that are now activated. That's your support. And then let go of it. And now see if you can repeat after me. So I can't hear you, but I'm assuming that that you're all doing it. So what we did now is to engage the support muscles. And I just need to elaborate a little bit about support. Because if you have been with many teachers, as I have, and I'm sure many of you have, you know that support is a very, it's an area with a lot of ideas around. Some teachers say that the support is the diaphragm going out. Some say that it's the diaphragm going in. Some say it's the lower abdominal muscles going out. Some say that they should go in. Some say it's the sides that go out. Some say that it's the back here that you should feel an expansion. And there are various combinations of those ideas. And I found it kind of liberating and interesting when one of my teachers told me about a study that was done around 30 years ago by now, I think, with 10 top opera singers. And the opera singers were asked, what is support? What do you do for support? And they all had very clear ideas. They pointed, it's this, it's that, whatever. And it turned out that they did point to different things that they did. But then they also measured with electrical instruments to see what muscle groups were actually activated when they sang. And it turned out that it didn't always coincide with what they thought they were doing. But it also confirmed that they did do different things to achieve support. So the conclusion is, as long as you have some way to control the bellow, the lungs, the stream of air, that could be labeled as support. I know it's a little bit of a simplification, but just to give us a sort of liberation around that notion, what support is. I like to refer to it as the laughing muscles. Ha, ha, ho, 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 ha, ha, ha. If you all try to laugh a little bit, ha, ho, ho, ho. Whatever you use there is your support. Ha, 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 ha. So that's our support, right? Doesn't need to be much more complicated than that. All right, so now let's warm up the voice. If you repeat after me. For a second. I can't hear you, so I can't sort of react to the sound, but typically what I need to do is reinforce and remind people of of the space that we can have just by separating the jaws a little bit. And I'd like to make a point too that for some it's enough to just relax the jaw and let the jaw hang in its own weight. And for some of us, because of how we're atrophied tendons or whatnot, we may need to work a little bit more to achieve that space. And that's not wrong. So maybe you want to sort of elongate your face and go into that yeah. Because there are different schools. Some teachers are adamant about the jaw must be disengaged, and other people are the opposite. It has to be engaged. And I think it depends on the person. So whatever gives you that sense of space without overdoing it. Again, let's try here. And the higher we go, the more the temptation is that the larynx sort of wants to crawl up and reach for those higher notes. And in classical singing, we don't want that to happen. It's another matter in jazz, folk music, etc., and pop. But in classical singing, we don't want that to happen. And it's important to know that in the vocal production, there are about 30 muscles involved. And this is what I heard, about 23 of them can lift, works to lift the larynx up, and only 7 of them anchors it down. So thereby, it's easy to understand why there is a sort of temptation to go up with the pitch, with the larynx, and we don't want that to happen. So a typical way of counteracting that is that when you climb up, think down, like this, to sort of stay in the same space you think down when you go up. Let's try. Now let's try this. Now, altos and basses, you can go an octave down. Sopranos and tenors, stay with me in the going up here. One more. Now we're going to do an exercise that focuses on the sort of the initial action of the vocal cords, how the vocal cords close. And I had one teacher, Solveig Grippe, in Stockholm, who was great with that. And she used to talk about the Bernoulli principle, the physical principle that allows airplanes to lift, because moving air has less density than stale air. So if we move air through the vocal cords, and just keep the vocal cords very relaxed, fairly close to each other, and then move the air through, the vocal cords will be sucked together without our sort of grasping for it or forcing the vocal cords to go together. So let's see if I can show it with 2 sheets of paper here. If I blow air through them, they should pull together. I hope you could see that. You could experiment with that at home if you're interested, but that's a physical fact. So just keeping the vocal cords, the vocal apparatus as in a state of surprise, sort of open. And then let's do this exercise, which I think is great for just that aspect. La, ha, 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 ha. So the second note in each group of 2 should be just like a little flippant result of the first one. Lo, don't pinpoint it. Lo, ho, ho, lo, ho, 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 ho. Again. Lo. And every time you start anew, you should feel as if the vocal cords just naturally float together, as it were. And at this point, I would like to introduce to you one of our wonderful sopranos in the San Francisco Symphony Chorus, one of our volunteer sopranos, Arlene Boyd. Arlene, are you with us?
I'm here, Ragnar. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Arlene. So
Hi.
could you feel free now, everyone, to sing along with Arlene, but I want Arlene to show us when we go higher and higher up into the soprano registers. Let's try here. La.
La,
Lo.
lo,
Le. Yes, and as you can see, Arlene is not sort of stretching up for that top note. So again, a reminder to think down for that top note. Excellent, Arlene. La. And for sopranos now, going above G, A flat, the feeling is of a horizontal stretch back rather than going deeper. If you go too deep, you may end up being too heavy. So the actual action of the vocal cords is a horizontal stretch to thin them out to get the higher pitches. La.
I'm just gonna interrupt and ask Arlene to step back a little bit because I think it might be able to handle the microphone a little better.
Okay, is that
Thank
better?
you.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Okay, Arlene. La.
Yes.
La. Oh, the sound is better. Thank you. And we're already up now to the Queen of the Night, high F. Thank you, Arlene. Very good. All right, so now let's climb down for basses and altos for everyone, actually. Riva del Sol. Down here. Riva del Sol. Riva del Sol. Riva del Sol. Riva del Sol. So I want to tell you a little trick that I learned from a bass baritone, an opera singer, who had been studying with a famous voice teacher in Vienna, and I don't know her name, but she said that for the very low notes for baritones, it can help to sacrifice a little bit of the good posture. We're always supposed to have good posture with our chest raised like this, right? But for the really low notes, and I'm a tenor, so I shouldn't be able to sing a low C, but if I fold a little bit and collapse the chest a little bit, you can actually cheat and get a lower note. Riva del Sol, rather than keeping this. So try that. Riva del Sol. All right. So now a Precoloratura exercise. Signore. So it's important here that you try to get real clarity and definition in the small notes, the fast notes. And you find that you know now absolutely you can't do it without using the support, the laughing muscles or whatever. So let's try. Signore, Signore, And again, a reminder, depending on how you sound, and I can't hear you now, but if you find yourself that maybe it's a little bit of a shallow sound, like it's a signor, then use the shape of the O. O is a good vowel to sort of delve a little bit more pharynx space. It's very natural. So try again, please. Signore. All right. So from there, now let's move into coloratura exercises. So let's start with this. Let's start here. I just want to say about coloraturas that if you find it difficult with singing fast, there are ways to practice coloraturas. You can or whatever you're practicing, the handle or Bach piece, dot them and then reverse the dotting. And then try again. So that's one way of doing it. The other trick I find is that you just have to do it over and over and not give up, even if it sounds and you don't get much definition. Just keep doing it and push yourself into speeds that are maybe a little bit above your speed level, and have the brain continually ask for clarity. And eventually the coordination between the support and the pitches will happen. So let's try that again. Yeah. Now, I would like to ask you if this is too fast or if it's too slow for you. I have no idea, but I guess I'm just have to be shooting in the dark here. Yeah, let's just continue. A couple more. Yeah. Yeah. Yo. Yo. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now let's throw in an exercise that Nicola Guerra always did in his warm-ups. That kind of throws it around a little bit. Let's start here. I'll play it for you. Let's try. Maybe you found that easy, then just speed it up. If it was too difficult, try it slower. Okay, so that's coloraturas. Now let's do a little bit of an exercise that is good for vibrato control. And this is something we don't practice much when you go to solo teachers and practice to become an opera singer or oratorio concert singer. But for choirs, it's great if you have that in your toolbox, that you're able to sing straight when you want, or a mixture, or a full-on ongoing vibrato when you want. So here's an exercise for that. So on the top note, on the long note, make a crescendo, and at the same time, try to keep it straight for about 2/3 of the time, and then ease into a vibrato at the peak of it. Let's try. So So this is, of course, a sensitive thing among singers to ask for vibrato control. But as a choir director, I have to say that it's very important. It depends on the taste of the choral style you're after, of course. But it can be, if you deal with singers that have more or less their whole singing life sung with a full-on vibrato, it can be actually harmful to just force yourself into straight tone. So I'm fully aware of that. And then there's the opposite problem. Some singers don't have a vibrato. Amateur singers who have perhaps sung in choirs, but always with a straight tone voice. A good way to develop a vibrato is actually the signora exercise. Signor, and doing that with a bit of a marcato, legato marcato. So that little whip, yo, creates a little bit of a shaking in the voice that can then develop into a vibrato. But if you deal with you've developed a vibrato that is always there ongoing, and you want to gradually and safely use straight tone, play with it for just short stretches. And the deal is, I think, because I've seen many examples of opera singers sort of pulling everything in, yo, and sort of straitjacketing themselves into straight tone. And then it becomes wearing, taxing after a while. Rather think of it as blowing air through a little bit more of a narrow funnel, as if you're blowing air through a straw. Moro, moro. So the direction is out, out, out. You don't pull it back into you. And then the vibrato, the release of the tone, is just around the corner. Then that's the feel to sort of achieve an effortless straight tone, I think. Okay, so time is moving. Just a couple of more exercises, expanding the voice. If you try this. So again, crescendo on the top note, and you can do that straight tone and then vibrato if you want. Here we go. Now, last exercise. And before you do it, one other way of mitigating that temptation to let the larynx go up with a pitch, feel your neck space, the neck space, that you open up in the neck. Almost like you have a backward turn funnel that keeps that openness in the neck. Here we go. One more. And of course, use these exercises in whatever pitch suits you. If your basses and altos, go down to the lower registers. All right, so now it's time for us to have a little masterclass part of this workshop. So we're going to ask Arlene to sing for us an aria from the St. John's Passion, Ich folge dir gleichfalls, and it has some interesting coloraturas and specifics that I would like to address and point out. So we're going to ask Arlene to sing from the top. I'll play you 4 bars, Arlene. Very good. So one of the specifics that I often talk about when I rehearse with choirs is what I call definition. Definition in coloraturas, but definition also in melismas. And melisma is when you sing 2 or more notes on one vowel in one syllable. So we have here folge here. So without any definition, which Arlene has a lot of, which is great, it would sound ich folge dir gleichfalls. It would be sort of slidey, right? So what we hear now is folge dir gleichfalls. Ich folge, folge, folge. It's almost as if you have small pockets of air. And again, I would like to have everybody try it, but it's no point because I can't hear you. But I know from experience that some people find that hard to sing with definition. So that's why I want to highlight that. Folge, you can even practice it, all of you, just reading it. Ich folge dir gleichfalls, like so. Ich folge dir. Just say that. Ich folge dir. Like you're repeating every syllable, right? And to get that clarity, you need a little pocket of air, I call it, or ich folge dir gleichfalls. So try that again, Arlene. Here's 2 bars before. Yeah, that's very good. Now, let's continue. And let's do the next 4 bars, Arlene. 4 bars before. Yeah, and then continue, please.
Keep going, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, let's hold there, Arlene. So here's a couple of things. So first we have und lasse dich nicht. How you treat the consonants, because that's a whole art in itself, right? Und lasse. The golden rule is that when we sing, and especially in choir, that the consonants are dealt with before the beat, so that the vowel appears on the beat. Und la, und la, und la. It's almost as if you could put a rhythm to it. Und lasse dich nicht. Try that, Arlene. Very good. Arlene, could you lengthen the L a little bit? Und la. Yes, very good. And now Arlene, here's that's great now. Arlene is showing very well how to deal with these 30-second notes. Lasse dich nicht, se dich nicht. That's a different type of coloratura. Those are so fast that you can no longer do them from the diaphragm. That's going to be too heavy. So you just do it in the throat. Like a ha, oh, lasse dich nicht. Like you're doing so beautifully, Arlene. Could you show that for us again?
I'll do it again.
Yeah, try again. Yeah. I shouldn't have pointed it out because you did it so naturally before. That's great. So now the next point is when you sang und lasse dich nicht. So this sort of sigh-like resolution with a melisma nicht. Here we definitely need a little pocket of air to be able to lean into the first note and taper the second note very quickly. Nicht, nicht. Almost like that. Could you just sing for us? Und lasse. Yes, maybe a little bit more definition, Arlene. So now we all understand what I mean by that. So no definition, nicht, it would slide together, but we want nicht, nicht, nicht. Again, same. Still a little bit more. If it were too much, it would sound und lasse dich nicht. That's too much. But you're still veering on the too little side. Nicht. Again. Okay, that'll pass. That's good. And what that enables us to do, and I think this occurs in Messiah and so many Handel works and Bach works, it enables us to really sing the first note fully to the bitter end, rather loud, sing into it, and then quickly sing the second note softer by virtue of that little pocket of air. Otherwise, that becomes more or less impossible. So that was one point that I wanted to make here. I have a couple of more points. So let's just move on. Let's go into the B section, Arlene. I'll give you 3 bars here. Okay, let's hold you there, Arlene. In general now, I think you should lower the larynx a little bit. We need a little bit more yawn and generous space for the whole thing. Here we go again. Yeah, very good. That's the hardest part of the whole aria that you just did there. So here, my point is about shadow vowels. I'm sure you're all aware of what it is, but for those of you who haven't heard the term, is when you sing an N, for example, bitten, you end it with a little bit of a vowel after the N, or M, or heard. That's a shadow vowel. And we may want to use that as a tool to make the text more clear if we're in a larger space, or an acoustically difficult space, or if the audience is far away from us, depending also on if you sing with an orchestra and they're very loud. So you want to play with that less and more till you find the good balance, because, and here's also, it's an area of tastes and different ideals in the choral world. My take on it is, and I know that I have many people who think the same, that diction can be too little, but it can also be too much. If somebody sings with exaggerated diction and is right in your face all the time, it sort of takes away from the phrasing, and you want it to be exactly calibrated for that room. So that's the thing that you need to have in your toolbox and be able to pull out. And sometimes you need great big shadow vowels. Then that feels exaggerated to you, but it'll be good out in the hall. So could you show us, Arlene, just the last thing we do before we move into the Q&A here? If you go from and then to beaten, give us a little bit more of a shadow vowel there. Yes, excellent. Thank you, Arlene. So there were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about, something that I call painting. And we could all just try that, because sometimes when you sing legato, and especially if it's a melisma, you linger on the vowel, like la. If you just sing it neutrally, la, it's fine, but it's a little boring if you have that exact same speed of air. But if you paint, which is a sort of micromanagement of each tone, la, can you hear what I'm doing there? There's a little bit of a pull and push on each little note, like a stroke. Try. That gives a little bit more sense of intimacy, and actually it's more a sense of enhancing the legato by virtue of sort of singing into each tone. If you do it too much, I call it pumping, and we don't want that. So that's also something that you need to calibrate carefully and pick and choose where you want it. But it's a great thing as a chorister to have in your toolbox. Well, time is flying, and it's time for Q&A. So again, Arlene, thank you so very much for singing for us, and applaud for Arlene.
Thank you. It was fantastic. We had some people chatting in the background, Ragnar, about whether or not an H is used when you were working on the articulated phrases, the articulated melodies, and one of our participants said it's not an H, it's just a definition of each note.
Yeah. So
is there any way to talk about how that feels, or how to control that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question, because it's a scientific question. What exactly is it, right? Well, if you sing coloraturas, that's a full H, right? But that's not the way we want to sing it. It again depends on the speed, but if you have a sort of medium speed, sort of Messiah coloratura speed, it's a definition, but it's not it's not an H. I'm not letting air slip through without there being a tone. The vocal cords are spinning all the way through, but the density of the air gets affected, and we do that by virtue of the diaphragm. Ha, ho, lo. So that's a legato marcato. You could also call it a legato marcato, right? Lo. A little push on each new note, but there's no gap. So most of the coloraturas should be dealt with that way. But as Arlene just sang, those really fast, und lasse dich, I'm not doing it well. Lasse dich, se dich, se. That's a really fast laughter, if you will. And if you put that under a microscope, there will be short gaps in there, but they're super short, right? Does that answer the question?
I think so. And it's not like inserting an H vowel. It's just interrupting the flow of air briefly.
Well, I wouldn't, let me clarify. Thanks, Lolly. Let me clarify. So in the coloraturas that I just showed, it's not even stopping there. It's more like pushing lo, ha, 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 as if you're laughing. Yes. You're not stopping anything. It's just the diaphragm sort of oscillating.
Yes.
It differs a little bit from ich folge, dir folge. There, actually, I'm not doing the same. I'm not saying ich folge dir gleichfalls. That would be way too heavy. So this is a different technique. So thanks for asking that question, Lolly. I guess that if you put that under a microscope, it's like an embryonic H. Yes. It's just at the border where the vocal cords open up and let air through without spinning. But they are still spinning, but it's on the border. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's really, really helpful because I think this has been very mysterious for a lot of singers in terms of how you produce that sound without getting sort of grabbing at it.
Well, let me just make that point even more clear. If you didn't have any definition, ich folge dir gleichfalls, you would slide around on a banana appeal. If you use that other coloratura technique with the diaphragm, it would be too heavy for this type of music. Folge dir gleichfalls, that's not what we want here, right? So folge dir gleichfalls, that's a lighter way of treating the melismas there.
That's really helpful. There's another really interesting question here. What is the difference as a singer between larger instrumental choral works like a Brahms Requiem or Mahler, something very big, and Bach, and the kind of music we're talking about today? Is there something general that you would want to say about the vocal production and as a singer, how to approach these works?
Well, yeah, I would say that it's great. It's very difficult to be a good chorister because you have to be able to do so many things. Not only sing well, but you also have to adjust to your neighbor and blend and follow micromanaging conductor directions, So it's in a way more difficult than being a soloist, but of course that's also very difficult. But yeah, to answer your question, I think when the larger works like Brahms, Mahler, Verdi, you want to be able to sing big. So you want to be have trained your voice so that you have a certain stamina and a certain strength, a certain decibel output that comes through maturing the voice by doing these exercises over and over again and pushing yourself ever so slightly without developing any bad habits and tensions. So Baroque music, it's not easier to sing Baroque music, absolutely not, but typically it's more coloratura, so you need to be fast and agile. But you may not want that big sound that is required for Brahms Requiem. So the best thing is if you can sing big for Brahms and then lean for Bach, and then maybe you even need a few days or weeks to readjust. Okay, we're doing B minor mass now, so I'm going to format my voice into this leaner type singing. And then for the bigger voices, you go into the gym and lift a little bit heavy weight for the Brahms Requiem.
Okay. Everybody wants to know if we're going to release this video so they can keep practicing their warm-ups. And I know we're going to send it to you to make sure that it is approved, but we're hoping to be able to give people an opportunity to come back to this session and keep working. So all I can say to folks is we certainly hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you, Lolly, because it's so hard. We all know it. It's so hard to do it on your own and to discipline yourself. It's so great if you can be pushed by doing it together as we're doing now. So let's aim for that.
Yes. We had a few questions. Let's see, people are just saying how much they're loving this, which is really great. And they want to do more. Do you have any just thoughts on how choirs are going to be able to get back together and start singing?
Well, we seem to be in a dire situation right now because choir singing has been pointed out as a high-risk activity, right, by virtue of the aerosols that spread. And I actually, a couple of months ago, I contacted an aerosol expert at the Lund University. There were already other studies underway, but I wanted to also have one from the Lund University, which was close to where I am now and the town where I grew up. And they made a study and it concluded more or less the same that other studies have concluded, that yes, there is more aerosol spreading when you sing rather than when you just breathe. The difference is not huge compared to loud speaking. So they're sort of up there, both of them. But there are two things. There are droplets from your articulation, but those droplets don't travel very far. So I doubt that the droplets is a huge problem for choir singers, because rarely do we face each other. We sing, maybe you want a shield or an umbrella at your neck to protect yourself from the person behind you. But so the droplets, even when you spit consonants, I don't think that's a major problem. The more tricky problem to get around are the aerosols, and they come from the alveoli, the parts of the lung, you know, the small compartments that when we breathe out and then breathe in again, there will be a little fluid film that then bursts when we breathe in. It's a natural thing, it happens. But especially when we really empty the lungs and then breathe in again, there are more of those fluid bursts, and they create small aerosols that then go up with the voice, with the breath, I should say. And the other factor is that there are aerosols being created in the very process of the vocal cords oscillating. There's something with that. If it's the moisture on the vocal cords that sort of release and create droplets, I'm not sure about that, but that's what those scientists told me, at least. So that's a problematic thing. So there are now singers' masks that are coming into production. I'm not sure. I'm hoping that that can be a solution. There's this whole debate about masks going on, and if they do help, then they should help us as choir singers.
Yes.
To stop the aerosols. And of course, it's not fun to sing with a mask, but these choir masks, they are designed so that you have space so that the lips are free to move and articulate.
Yes.
You get more space. So maybe that's a solution for us in the at least near future, and hopefully in the longer future, we'll hope that this passes somehow.
Yes.
Sooner rather than later.
Do you have any suggestions for particular kinds of just physical exercise that are good for singers to stay healthy while they can't really focus on singing?
Well, I myself, I did Aikido, a Japanese martial art, for many, many years, but that is all gone now. We can't do Aikido because that's a close contact sport. So I'm doing yoga now at home, and I think yoga is probably great for singers, right? You do these back stretches, and you oh, by the way, I want to show you an exercise that I meant to do in the warm-up, that stretching the vocal, the neck in different ways can also be very good for the voice. And I learned this stretch. If you put your hand just under the collarbone, the edge of the pink little finger part of the hand, and pull down a little bit, and then stretch.
Oh.
Diagonally. Do you feel that?
In my ear, right below my ear a little bit.
Right, and you can do it in different angles. And so you stretch these tendons that sort of are around the larynx, right? And other side. So that can be a really good thing. Sometimes we need that stretching because we get, just as we need to stretch the whole body. So singer stretches. And there are these tongue exercises where you stick your tongue out, like, like that. You can even, I went to voice massage people, a couple of voice massage people that take a towel and massage your tongue and pull your tongue out. So I was so passionate about singing, and I wanted to get as full a spectrum as I could on different techniques and things that are out there. But yeah, in general, to just keep cardio exercises, I think, are good for singers, so that we have our breath capacity.
Yeah, yeah. So I know in San Francisco you have two choirs. You have the big symphony chorus and you have CapellaSF. How many is that all the choirs you're currently not able to work with?
No, I'm not able to work with all the choirs in the world right now.
No, but well, right.
So, yeah. No, those are my two choirs, my regular choirs that I work with. So, but I also freelanced a lot, and that has been canceled. The next thing I have actually is a Christmas oratorio in December in a bit north of Stockholm with the Ericsson Chamber Choir, and I'm crossing fingers that it'll happen.
Are you going to try and do any kinds of rehearsals or virtual performances or performances outside maybe with your local choirs, your San Francisco choirs?
Yes, we're looking into with the symphony chorus what we can do in the near future. Right now the lockdown is so hard, so that we can't do anything really, but we are looking at an array of options, and singing outdoors is definitely one of them. So when the time is right, we'll look into that more carefully. To sing also with small groups inside at some point, and then hopefully expand from that.
Well, everybody's very eager. We had one last question, which is, do you do any individual coaching or, via Zoom or Facebook? If people get in touch with us for that, can we pass the information along to you?
Sure, pass it along. I do coaching intermittently, and I've done all of the years. I think it's a good way for me to sort of keep in shape and keep on top of all those things. But as time allows, I've always have a few singers going. But now, of course, I have a little bit more time. The problem is the time difference. I'm in Sweden right now, so it's a 9-hour time difference. So it would have to be mornings between 9 and maybe 2 p.m., 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Well, but yeah, I'm open to doing coaching. So
I'm sure we could fill up your schedule, but maybe we can do some more group stuff with Amateur Music Network, because people loved it and would love to do more. So maybe we can talk about what the next phase of this could be for everyone, because
great, Lolly.
I do feel it's so wonderful to be able to have everybody, even if it's not truly together, at least it feels like we're singing. So
yes, it's way better than nothing, let me tell you that.
For sure. So everybody, thank you so much for coming. And Ragnar and Arlene, thank you so much. And we have everyone, I don't know if you can see gallery view, but we have everyone applauding and just so grateful. So
thank you all so very much.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.